It is just about 5 minutes after 11 o'clock. It's Friday. It's beautiful outside, and a good friend from a long time ago is in the studio. Dr. John Grace is here. He is a board-certified psychiatrist, and he comes here from Crystal River, where his practice is. He's got a new show. It's called Dash for Dementia, and I believe he's going to do it as an open show. In other words, the phone calls are welcome. Am I right, Doctor?
Sure. The Dash is actually an event that we're going to be doing in Citrus County to raise money for the Memory Enhancement Center, which is a nonprofit organization helping coordinate care for memory disorder patients.
Oh, okay. So that's not the name of the show.
That is not the name of the show. That's the name of the event.
So the show is called the John Grace Show?
We can have people call in and...
You haven't aged at all. So how long? That was a long time ago. How long?
It was about 8 years.
Wow.
I know.
8 years, Robin.
I know. It's You look the same.
No wonder Robin didn't recognize you at Michael's.
That's right.
The kids have gotten older. I'd say I've gotten older too. I may not look it, but I certainly feel the mileage a little bit.
Wow. Well, good to see you again. And all right, so you're going to be answering questions about dementia specifically? Or?
Sure, and also about this center that we're really, really excited about in Citrus County. Let me start there. The Memory Enhancement Center, our goal there is that when you have patients with memory disorders or cognitive problems, one of the things that kind of gets lost in the shuffle is keeping track of them, because they don't really keep track of their own health care. So what we've done is, this is a nonprofit organization, and the sole goal of this is to sort of have one place where their records are stored and sort of coordinate the care between all their providers, including EMS providers, the sheriff's department. Is, say someone with confusion were to show up in an emergency room, they'll be able to log into our site and get all of their information so that they're going to be able to take better care of those people.
Oh, wow. And do they get better care of themselves, the patients?
Absolutely, because one of the things about patients with memory problems is that we kind of lose their story easily. Like if a guy was a soldier or a businessman, some of that gets lost in healthcare. If he shows up in an emergency room and there's nobody there, no family member, we want that story, that essence, that emotional picture to follow people around so that they know who they're dealing with as a human being, not just someone who's there and confused. Because when you learn people on that level, you take much better care of them. For instance, I'll give you an example. I mean, there was one patient who I'd worked with for a few years before I realized that when I handled him in a very military fashion, because he was a soldier, he would control his behavior and we wouldn't have to give him medication.
Really?
If I said, hey, soldier, you need to check that behavior, he took that cue. Now that information, that needs to follow the patient so that it saves him from being over-medicated or being in a facility. So that's the essence of this center, is, say, when we learn about people who have memory issues, things that are important to take care of them, we want that information to follow them wherever they go.
And I would imagine, just if I was the patient and you knew a little bit about me, that would make me feel good.
Absolutely. Yeah, because knowing you, knowing how you like to handle people, how you like to be treated, they don't have that to carry with them. So we need someone to sort of be their voice when there's no family member or someone to speak up.
Right. So do you have does that information somehow... Is it accessible electronically? How does that work?
Well, that's the beauty of it. A few years ago, people were very frightened about keeping information on the internet, and nobody wanted to do that. But these days, actually, we've discovered that we all tried to keep track of our own information at home and manage our own security, and ended up getting a lot of viruses and didn't do so hot. So people have realized that storing your bank records actually in a cloud online is actually more secure, because you have people who are guarding the information closer. So the core to this center is using cloud-based records. We're putting those records online in a secure location, and then having encrypted, similar to bank encryption, access to those records controlled. And the rise of cloud-based electronic health records is really what makes this center possible, and people excited about it.
So what help us understand, maybe you could take us with words into, like, your office perhaps when you're working with somebody with severe dementia. Let's go to the severe for a second here. You start talking to them and you mention nothing at all about their history. Does a light turn on when you start to say, oh, by the way, I see in my notes that you're a painter? Or when that information comes from you to them, do they change?
Yeah, you bet. Absolutely. I mean, when you know some personal information, because you have to remember with most forms of dementia, and that's the key to this center, most forms of dementia that you will see, whether it be Alzheimer's, Pick's disease, frontotemporal, most of them have largely conserve their long-term memory. So the distant memories from their past are going to be much more accurate, much more vivid for them than some of the more recent things. They may revert back to childhood. They may look for their mother, look for a sibling. So having some information that is maybe tied to their past or where they came from is going to make it a lot easier to relate to them.
Will they stay there overnight?
Oh, at the center?
Yeah.
Not necessarily. One of our goals eventually is to tie this into maybe an adult daycare where we could bring people who are impaired to sort of give spouses a rest. But initially, no, they'll just come sort of to keep track of their information there, and they will be referred to other areas in the community, but what we'll be doing is connecting all of those areas through the internet record.
Wow.
I want to make sure that the listeners know that they can call in. Specifically, last week when we thought you were going to be here, we mentioned it.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. But there was a lady who clearly had some questions. And so if she's listening right now, or anybody actually, if you want to call in, the number is 622-WOCA, 622-9622. It's a sponsored number, which means it's the WOCA Climate Control Source Hotline. Those folks who put the air conditioner in here actually pay for the phone line, so that it helps out. So tell me about the family members of the person with dementia. Do they somehow benefit from this as well?
Well, that's the beauty of having all of us connected through a single portal. What we are doing is we're working with an electronic healthcare record provider to come up with a healthcare record that is specifically designed for cognitively impaired patients. And I'll tell you about a few of the features, but one of the ones that we're most excited about is a patient portal. What that means is that caregiver is going to be able to log on and say, by the way, John was not good these 3 days when we did this medication change. That's going to automatically go into the record for us, and we're going to be able to add that sort of to the whole picture. So they're going to have direct input into the records that we're going to be able to see. The other nice thing about it is that they're going to have access to patient-specific education. So again, if they have a Lewy body dementia, they're going to be able to get information sent from us to them that's specific for their condition.
Wow.
How about the people that are afraid they're starting to lose it? Like, they'll be driving and maybe go through a stop sign and realize they've been through a stop sign, and then they start getting concerned about themselves. Like maybe they are getting dementia, and will they come to you so you can maybe help offset that?
That's a great question. The reason that we have this center is really dedicated to those patients specifically in the early stages of memory loss, because diagnosis is so important at that time. There are a lot of conditions that may look like Alzheimer's disease or dementia where you're having some cognitive deficits, where you feel like you're just not thinking or concentrating as well. And these can be some very treatable conditions. There's a lot of medications, there's a lot of medical conditions, there's a lot of psychiatric conditions. Actually, depression is one of the most common reasons for memory deficit. And so we screen for these things at the center, and we want to know what type of memory your problem's having early so that we can monitor it and help either stop the decline or at least slow it.
You have a phone call, John. Again, Dr. John Grace is in the studio answering your questions about dementia and other psychiatric issues if you have a question. Good morning. Thank you for waiting, first of all, and you're on the air now with Dr. Grace.
Yes, good morning. My name is Jackie, and I actually have a couple of questions if Dr. Grace would be so kind. He's been talking about the sensors, and I wanted to know, does a patient, in order to be able to be enlisted in this program, do they need to be an established patient, or can it be a patient that is currently going to another physician and then they refer them to the center, just so that way their records are, like Dr. Grace said, in a unified area where it can be accessed, let's say, and can it be accessed if the patient goes out of state? Can it be accessed, from anywhere within the state, or does it have to be strictly Marion County in case they travel, to see other family members and have an incident where they may wander off, or they may, sundown or have an incident, where they get combative and they have to end up in the hospital, or, they get forgetful or something like that. So does the patient have to be established, number one, or can it be a referral? And then number two, how would you register a loved one, and is there a cost associated with the sensor? And if so, is it something that would be covered through insurance? And how do you go about getting involved with his program? Those are my questions.
All right. Great questions, all three. The first, whether a patient needs to be established or if they can be referred from their physician. The answer is either one. Again, why this is a nonprofit is that reimbursement for coordination of care really is a little bit limited out there. And this is a group, these cognitively impaired patients, where it's most critical. And so that's why we got together and we said, you know what, we need to have a nonprofit organization, because really there aren't a lot of people giving money to sort of connect all these dots that does this for people. The nice thing about that is it's not threatening to anybody. We're not saying come to our center and stop seeing your doctor. We're saying that we're going to sort of connect all of the pieces for you that are already out there in the community and flow them through one central location so that we can more effectively use what we already have. There is no cost as far as these services. Obviously, if you are referred to someone, a neurologist or a psychiatrist, for some higher level treatment, then there would be associated with that, just like any other medical treatment that you received. And I think that and the beauty of it, as far as adding other centers, since we have that patient portal system, a patient can log on and allow other providers. So if you did go to, let's say you traveled to Wyoming or something like that, you could actually log on and give someone over the internet permission to view your records. And we have emergency codes as well that people can put in for emergency use, like an emergency room in Delaware or something along those lines. So I think that answered all three.
Did you have a follow-up question, ma'am?
No, he did a great job answering all of those. So in all actuality, if you're in an assisted living facility, if you're living with a family member, or even like the lady that had spoken previously had said, if you're even thinking that you may have early dementia, this is a great thing to do, just because it kind of keeps everything tied up and organized. So that way, in the event that something happens, it's all there, and emergency personnel as well as physicians and other medical establishments have access to your records without you having to remember what you did with it or who has it or trying to figure out all the different keys to the puzzle. And I guess the reason that I'm asking all these questions is because I actually have a loved one who's in the early stages, so I'm just trying to figure out what all my options are going to be in the event that she starts to get progressively worse. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you doing this. And I'm assuming you're going to give the information on how to contact and how to be able to register for your sensor at the end of the program or sometime throughout the program. Is there like a phone call or a
Sure. I'll give my office number now. 352-795-2246. And our website also has links to all of these information as well. And that's a very easy website. It's just John Grace MD, www.johngracemd.com.
All right, great. Thank you so very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And in addition to the information, it is being recorded as a video, so it'll be
very good.
You can use it any way you want. And for the listeners, it'll be on the WOCA Facebook page, on the WOCA YouTube channel, and of course, Dr. Grace will put it on your side, I'm presuming.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. So it will be out there. I wanted to go one step further on her call. Actually, I think that a center like this is actually critical for anybody that has something that's really important regarding your medical care. That is important for people to know if you're not able to provide that information. Mm-hmm. And if you think back, we all sort of have some idiosyncrasies about us that, boy, if something happened to me and I wasn't able to voice this, I really want the doctors to know this. Either A, I'm afraid of the dark, or B, I may respond slightly better to male staff than women's staff, or something along those lines that, when you say, let's say you get the flu or have a reaction and you're confused, what are some basic things about you that people taking care of you should know?
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
And having access to that in a way that everybody can get to it, I think, is something that makes us all feel a lot more comfortable.
Good use of technology, too. And we do have another phone call. Good morning. You're on the air with Dr. Grace.
Yes, good morning, doctor. Does alcoholism play a role with dementia?
That's a wonderful question, actually, and I was just reading an article about that the other day. Let's talk about two things. When alcohol, there's an alcohol-related dementia that you can have that is strict in of itself. If you have no pathology associated with Alzheimer's disease or frontotemporal dementia or Pick's disease or stroke, if you have none of that, but you drink heavily, you can get a form of dementia associated largely with the vitamin deficiencies that are associated with alcohol. And in that, you can have prominent difficulties, again, with short-term memory is sort of classic. One of the hallmarks of alcohol-related dementia is making up of stories. They call this confabulation. It's the technical term for that. But the answer, short and long, is that yes, alcohol can cause dementia by itself, and it certainly can worsen other forms of dementia. And it does that through vitamin deficiency. It does it because it's a central nervous system depressant. You get very depressed when you drink, or at least most people do. And It also sort of stops processing speed. Let me go one step further and say a lot of the sedative agents like benzodiazepines, Xanax, Klonopin, Valium, are also associated with dementia with long-term use in high doses, almost indistinguishable, except for the vitamin deficiency component with alcohol. So I hope that helps.
Can a person with alcoholism be treated by you, or should they be treated for their alcoholism first and then come to see you?
Well, we make that part of our initial evaluation. Substance use is very difficult. I mean, there are people who have what's called a primary substance abuse problem, where they have an addiction to alcohol, and then there's people who are medicating another condition. They're medicating an anxiety disorder, or they're medicating post-traumatic stress disorder, and sort of teasing that out is a lot more complicated than you would imagine.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
You got it.
Can a person who lives here part-time, like snowbirds, can they sign up for at the Memory Enhancement Center and just have all their records there, and then when they leave, that you still have their records and they come back?
Yeah, I mean, if we didn't make it friendly to snowbirds, then we'd miss out on half of the state. So yes, absolutely.
So that sounds like you would need the information from their doctor wherever they're from. Right?
Well, that's the idea, is that we're going to get, and again, I'll tell you, healthcare records, there's a plus and some minus to it. One of the big minuses that you have with healthcare records, and working with the VA, I got to see a lot of it, is that you request records and you'll get 1,000 pages. Nobody can read it. It's too much.
Good point.
It's laborious. Yeah. So again, what this center is really focused on is putting what's most important there, and putting a summary page that, like, okay, this is what you guys need to know. I mean, we're not only talking about gathering an endless supply of information, we're talking about making it usable for people at almost every level of your care. And that goes from the EMS guy to the nurse in the emergency room to the CNA working at an ALF. I mean, that's the key to having this information, is you have to be able to distill it down to some pieces where people can use it.
Wow. Now, when you say some people respond better to like a male doctor or a female doctor, does that apply also to like, maybe I'll respond better to a guy with a New York accent or something?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you have to pay attention to all of that stuff.
Well, it's amazing. And again, anybody who's taken care of someone with memory problems for a long time will tell you that there is some really important pieces of information that they've gotten. We want to save those. That's the difference here, is that it may not be the information that sticks out in sort of in traditional medical issues, but this is the kind of stuff that makes taking care of them much easier and probably saves them from some unnecessary interventions.
Are we, because of technology constantly advancing, are we now more aware of what causes dementia? And I guess just part two to the question, so that you can answer both at once, is there actually a physical change in the brain with dementia, or is it something just not even visible to like a scanning device or
no?
Something?
I mean, most dementia is diagnosed at autopsy. I mean, we can see after you've passed away. I mean, we can diagnose some of the components, like with Alzheimer's. I mean, we're looking at amyloid amyloid is a protein in your body that tends to build up in tangles in Alzheimer's disease. And we can see some of that on some scans. A PET scan is one of the more commonly described scans to look for, but it's not a direct correlation, and that's why it's so important to sort of know these people clinically and individually. One of the things that I think that is really important to understand anytime you're dealing with medicine is that medicine studies are done on average. And what I mean by that is that we do things and say, well, this is what happens to the average patient. We do that too. But if you think of your own body, how many components of you are not average? How many doesn't fit your shoe size, your head size, and things like that. And so you have to understand that in any given individual, there's going to be a lot of outliers in how they respond to a certain medication or a certain intervention. And that's why you can't just indiscriminately put people into a certain category and say, well, we're going to close the book, without really evaluating these people individually over time to each intervention, and knowing what kind of person are and what they want. And I, again, what it comes down to is remembering the story of someone with dementia. That's what it means to me.
But you also have to have that communication between the caregiver, because sometimes if you do prescribe medication, you have to make sure the caregiver realizes that they have to give this medication to the patient.
And let's talk about why a center like this is so critical for that. Because we know that if we give you a job, we increase your compliance. If I just say, go home and watch this person, okay, yeah, they may do that. But if I say, you know what, go home, give them this medication.
Right.
Log in to our website. Let us know how they're doing. That is empowering caregivers. That's making them feel like they have more control, and that's going to make them more involved with the process. I firmly believe that the days of doctors standing on high and coming down with this knowledge is over. I mean, the knowledge is out there. Everybody is really a part of the team. And we want to make the caregivers more involved, sort of, with the caregiver, with the center like this, and I think that the access does that.
So do they enter their own information as well? Like, let's say I'm a caregiver, and I say, Timmy was great today, and he got a little upset, but so did I. I got upset. I mean, he was throwing oatmeal at me, and I mean, is that even important?
Well, no. I mean, caregiver burnout's critical. That is a large portion of our practice, and I am frequently pulling caregivers aside and saying, I may not be able to save your loved one here from this disease, but I can save the person they care about most, and that means you've got to save yourself here. So I mean, there's a lot of caregiving care that is critical when you talk about cognitive impairment.
Well, and it sounds like it's probably a mixed reaction to something like the Memory Enhancement Center, as far as using it as a daycare. Is that fair? I think that's the term you used before, where, like, let's say, I'm dedicated, I'm going to be with my loved one until the day that he or she's no longer here. But then I realize, wow, I bit off more than I can chew. I need some alone time. And so I can drop my loved one off, right? But then I have mixed emotions, because now I feel like I'm not living up to what I originally committed to.
Well, but that's a different ball game these days. I think when you look back, our ability to keep people alive with a much more complicated medication regimen, with a much greater degree of impairment, is significantly higher than it was 50, 60 years ago. So, I mean, 50, 60 years ago, saying I'm going to stand by and do this, until it really was a realistic commitment. These days, when you're talking about someone that requires around-the-clock care, there really isn't any human being that can do that by themselves without running themselves into the ground. And making people aware of that reality before the harsh reality gets pushed on them is a big part of what we do.
So you're there for them too.
If you're not, then you're not treating the condition.
So is there a physical location? Maybe I missed this part of this.
Our initial location is at Superior Residences in Lecanto, Florida, and that's where we're going to do the initial screening and again, sort of start the process of screening people for memory disorders and depression, and referral to physicians who will work with us and then send their information back to the center.
Okay, where are Superior Residences?
It's in Lecanto, Florida, on Highway 44.
On 44, okay. I think I know where that is.
Oh, well, good.
Pretty sure.
Get around.
Well, my mom lived in Beverly Hills, so sort of kind of knew that area. Well, excellent. I love listening to you talk. I mean, we learned so much from you the first time you did the show with us 8 years ago.
Right.
I can't tell you how many things that I still think about. I mean, things that you taught us about. One of the things I remember was simply the fact that dementia let's see, all Alzheimer's is not dementia, or all dementia is not Alzheimer's. There was one thing is.
Well, let's start there. Let's say.
Give me a refresher.
Right. All memory loss is not dementia.
Oh, okay.
And all dementia is not Alzheimer's. The difference between memory loss and dementia is memory loss is simply not being able to, it's exactly what it sounds like. You're not able to remember certain things. When you talk about dementia, and this is what you see when you have someone with dementia, it's a much greater difficulty and impairment. People with dementia also struggle with naming things and doing things. If I give Robin if she has an advanced dementia, I give her a pair of scissors. She doesn't know how to do them. So that's not really a disorder of memory. I mean, it's more what we call a praxis, that you can't do something that's associated with your normal functioning. Another big component of memory of dementia is what's called executive functioning, the ability to know the right order. For instance, when I make my cup of coffee, I put the granules in the filter and pour the water in, and there's an order about how I do those things. Someone with dementia will put those things out of order. They'll grab the coffee cup and just start drinking before they've actually made the coffee. So there is a lot more to dementia than simple memory loss. Now, when we talk about dementia, Alzheimer's disease is obviously the most common form. And that's the one that everybody thinks of. But it's only one type. You can have an alcohol-induced dementia. You can have dementia from having mini strokes. You can have dementia associated with Parkinson's, called Lewy bodies. And you can have what's called pseudo-dementia, or false dementia, if you're depressed. So if people are really sad, it's not really that they can't remember. It's they don't have an energy to do much of anything, including think. And so they will come in, and ironically, depressed patients will actually complain about memory problems more than dementia patients will.
Wow.
That is, wow.
So
you are so knowledgeable.
Let's make sure we give out the phone number again and any other information to contact you.
Oh, yeah. The number in our office is 352-795-2246, and the website is John Grace MD. And you can learn about our fundraiser, which is going to be December 7th. We're going to have a walk at Lecanto High School to raise money for the Memory Enhancement Center. So the idea is you kind of come out in a Christmas theme. My kids will be dressed as elves or pumpkins or something. I told my daughter she had to dress like a jack-o'-lantern, which she was very upset about.
Wait a minute. I think I saw you dressed as a pirate one time.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Yes, you did. So.
I think that was before pirates were cool, too.
Yeah.
That's right.
I think you were the trendsetter.
I brought pirating back, yes.
Yeah, John's always one step ahead.
So we'll do this every week up till December 7th. I'm going to be here, and we're going to be talking about dementia and anything else anybody wants to talk about. So I think it'll be fun.
All right. Thank you, John. Good to see you again. Dr. Grace.
Thanks, guys.
If you need Dr. Grace's number, call us here at the radio station. We'll be glad to repeat it for you, or it'll be online. And this video, in fact, will be online. This interview will be online as well. We'll take a little break, and we'll be right back.
Habitat for Humanity of Marion County is a ministry dedicated to improving lives by providing affordable and decent housing. Help them help others by visiting the Habitat for Humanity Ocala home store on Northwest